Hello, everyone who is attending live. My name is Molly Montgomery, and I am the Director of Library Services at the Idaho College of Osteopathic Medicine. And we're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so talking about reference managers. I am going to go ahead and get started here. Oops. Let's see, I don't know. Oh, here we go. Okay. So as you already noticed, this webinar is being recorded. So for those of you who are attending live, by continuing to be in the webinar, you are consenting to being recorded. But the recordings are also available at the Scholarly Snippets YouTube channel as well. So about this webinar, so this is part of a series called Scholarly Snippets to help you advance your research skills and support your scholarly activities. The participants in this particular webinar related to reference managers, or after you're finished with this, you'll be able to describe what reference managers are and the value of using them, and hopefully identify the main features of most reference managers. I will let you know that this is a very high-level overview. I'm not going to tell you how to use specific reference managers, and I'm not going to show you the ins and outs of each individual reference manager. It's much more broader picture. But we will have some webinars from Scholarly Snippets in the next month that talk about specific reference managers if you're interested. Okay, so let's talk about reference managers in general. If you have done any kind of research or have had a librarian talk to you about reference managers, you have probably seen one of these. EndNote is probably one of the best known, and it's probably been the one that's been around the longest. But we also have things like Zotero and Mendeley, RefWorks, Papers, PaperPile. There's a whole bunch. There's like, I don't know, more than 100 different individual reference managers. These are the big ones though. For the rest of this webinar, I'm going to be focusing mostly on Zotero and Mendeley, at least using the screenshots for both of those, because those are the ones I know the best, and those are the ones I have access to. I actually have never used EndNote, though I've been a librarian for almost 20 years. I've never used it, which is really funny to me. But so these are ones we'll focus on, and you have probably at least recognized a couple of these. So what is a reference manager? They're also known as citation managers because they are designed to help you manage your citations or manage your references. They can save and store all kinds of references, not just articles and textbooks. They can also store references related to YouTube channels and podcasts and interviews and conference presentations. If it's something that can potentially be cited, then it can be stored in a reference manager, at least the citation, if not the whole item itself. One of the other great things about reference managers is they allow for cloud-based sharing and collaboration. So as long as you are using a reference manager and you have an account, no matter what device you're using, you should be able to get to your resources, whether that's from your phone or from a home computer or a work computer. And they also allow you to collaborate both within your institution and outside your institution. And one of the things at least the students like the best is that they will cite the references for you. You don't have to build references and reference pages one by one. And they are also a wonderful tool that will most definitely change your life. I have been teaching about reference managers and how to use individual reference managers for, I don't know, over a decade. They're some of my favorite classes to teach because people literally will say, wow, when you show them how to do something, and I have had actual, from nurses to physicians to students say, this has changed my life. So just so you know, I'm not overselling it. People have actually said that. Okay, so why should you use a reference manager? Even if you're maybe not involved in a giant research project or a huge systematic review, what will a reference manager do for you? Well, they help you get and stay organized. I don't publish a lot of articles. I don't do a lot of original research, but I read a lot and I like to work on projects and I work on presentations and I do lectures. And so reference managers help me keep all that information organized. They also help you collaborate with others. So if you are working on a shared project, again, it doesn't have to necessarily be working on writing an article. It could be working on a PowerPoint together or some other scholarly activity. It allows you to all store all of those citations and information in one place. And it can save you so much time and so much frustration versus trying to track things down and store things in ways that maybe not that efficient. Sorry, I keep going the wrong way with my mouse. So let's talk a little bit about what reference managers can do, and the way to understand this is maybe sort of a historical perspective of how we have organized references in the past. So those of you like me who maybe went to undergrad or graduate school a while ago, maybe prior to the internet being nearly as ubiquitous as it is now, maybe you remember going to the library and doing a research project and actually having to copy out articles from bound journals or individual journals. And maybe you saved those in binders, or you just had papers everywhere, like maybe I did. So that wasn't great. It was not a really efficient way to organize things. You could work okay, but it was hard to find things. Things got lost. It didn't make citing them easier, and it certainly wasn't easy to collaborate with others. So you could also write your reference page. The old school style, I remember this, it was painful and horrible, where I remember using a literal ruler to make sure I had a 1-inch margin. Thankfully, that's a thing long of the past, but we used to have to do this where you would have to manually enter every reference. And so you're checking your citation guide and making sure it actually matches. You enter them one by one, and it was completely soul-sucking. The whole research project just became hating references, and that was so sad. So kind of a sort of modern take on organizing and citing is like this, where maybe you have a bunch of PDFs in a file somewhere. This is just an example of a Google file that I have. So I put a bunch of PDFs in there and it worked okay. Like I can sort of organize them and I can find them. And then I can also use a citation, sort of not really a citation manager. These are sort of like citation generators, where they will allow you to enter the information about your citation and they will spit out a reference, which is kind of helpful. Some databases are doing this now too. So this is an example of PubMed. It has a cite button and you can just copy and paste that and put it in your reference list, which is, okay, but it's one by one and it takes a while. So citing and organizing with reference managers is so much better because it's incorporated into pretty much every step of the research process, where you can search. So I'm doing a lecture tomorrow on guidelines, and so I wanted to find some information on guidelines. I'm in PubMed, I've cited it, I've found something, or I've been PubMed, I've searched for it, I found something I want to save, so I add it to my reference manager. And usually, we'll look at this in a minute, usually there's just a button on your browser somewhere. You click that button, it sends it to your reference manager, and when you're ready, you can cite it, and it truly does feel like magic. It is so easy. It makes the process so much better than it used to be. So a quick look on how most reference managers work, where you can take information from when you're searching, as I showed in the last slide. So you're searching in PubMeds and all, Google Scholar, other databases, maybe some other library resources like library catalogs. You can also search YouTube and websites and podcasts. You decide there's something you want to save. You click a button, which is usually as easy as it is. You import that into your reference manager. And within your reference manager, you should be able to access it everywhere because almost all of them are cloud-based. You can organize everything in a way that works for you. You can create groups to work with others, and it allows you to store PDFs. Then the next step is exporting things from your reference manager to a bibliography, or I can just copy and paste a citation and put it in a PowerPoint or put it in an email, something that's really easy. You can also share references, even if you're not working in a group. If you just want to share a list of references with someone, it's very easy to do that and export it from a reference manager. And of course, the biggest thing I think is to keep track of what you find, and not lose things, which is so great. Okay, so some of the common features, sorry, I am going all over the place with this. Okay, so some of the common features of reference managers are included here. And so I'm going to talk about each of these in detail and have some screenshots. So usually you're looking for something that's got easy to import into the reference manager. You want some sort of organization tool. You want a way to store the PDFs of articles and other items. It's nice to have annotation tools if you can find it. Then there's also sharing and collaboration, and a tool that allows you to cite as you're writing. So the first thing to look for is the import options, and this will vary depending on the reference manager you choose. So in the upper right-hand corner, I just took a screenshot of some of what it looks like to import things into The one on the left is Zotero, then it's Mendeley, then Cite. So the button kind of looks like this. So if you're on a page where any of these reference managers can find something to cite or import, there will be a button that looks like one of these. And all you do is click that button. Then it will come up with a window that says something about you're going to import this to your library. So there's Zotero here on the left. So it says, hey, which one of these would you like to add to your library? You click the ones you want and it imports it. Mendeley is here on the bottom. Similar, it allows you to choose a folder that you want to save those items to. And then PaperPile is another app which can be added to a browser as well. This is just a Google Scholar search. And at the end of that Google Scholar citation, it just allows me to have a feature to add it to PaperPile. So you want something that's very easy to do because it's going to save you, again, a lot of time. The next thing is, how can you organize this information? If you are doing any kind of research project, even if it's not a giant research project, things are going to get out of control pretty quickly. So you want to make sure there's a way to organize things that make sense to you. So you can have, this is Zotero on the left-hand side, where you can have folders, you can have subfolders, and you can have sub-subfolders, as I have shown there. That's too much information for sure. But Zotero also has a feature called tags, where it will pull in some subject headings and subject tags from articles and from library catalogs, but then you can add your own tags and you can search for items based on those tags. So I have down here that this is something I want to order via interlibrary loan. So I can just click on that and it will bring up everything else that I need to order as well. Cite, which is another reference manager, has tags as well, and they are so easy to use. It's really colorful and nice and very easy to search. So this is something, if you like tagging versus folders or using both, those are options within each of these reference managers. Okay, so PDF storage. This is where things start to get, if not expensive, at least you're going to start getting charged for things, because the PDF storage is limited with free tools. I'm going to talk about pricing in a separate slide, but just know that if you're going to be storing a lot of PDFs, expect to pay for it. So with Zotero, which is on the left, it just includes the PDF underneath the citation information, and Mendeley is down here on the bottom, and they've got that PDF right there next to the article. So annotation options. This is something that's not a feature in all reference managers, but if it's something that's important to you, it's good to look for it. So both Mendeley and Cite allow you to open up the PDF within the reference manager and highlight it and add notes. And at least, I think both of them, but it might just be Cite allow, when you are working in groups, that everyone can be adding their own comments and notes, and it keeps track of who is adding what, which is very handy. But Zotero is my favorite, honestly, but this is something where they are a little behind the game because they don't allow for in reference manager annotations. So one of these days, maybe they'll catch up, but that's where they're at. So sharing and collaboration, even if you're not working on a team or in a big project, it's nice to know that it's an option in the future, especially if this is a reference manager you plan on using for a while. And like adding PDFs, this does tend to be a premium feature, which at some point you're probably going to have to pay for. So in Cite, we can have 3 projects that are shared. Zotero, it allows you to have a certain amount. I can't remember. I think Mendeley is the same. You can have a certain amount of projects that are shared, and usually those are limited by the number of people in each of those groups. So Cite as you write is a great feature, and this is something I think is really important. Students love this, but I love it as well because it makes it so much easier to insert citations as you're actually writing the paper, the document, the policy, whatever. So Zotero and Cite both have really nice add-ons that can be added to Word, to Google Docs, to a lot of other word processing tools as well. But the ones that I'm most familiar with are Word and Google Docs. So as you're writing your paper, so I have kind of on the bottom here, I've written a sentence, I needed to add a citation. I click on the add citation feature that's included in Word, And then you can start typing whatever you need to be able to pull up that citation. Sometimes you're going to know the author's last name. So in this case, I added that. Sometimes you only know some keywords from the title. You can use that as well. And then it will prompt you to ask what kind of citation style you want. And you click enter and your citation just appears. And it's magic and wonderful. It's so easy to write papers this way. And then when you're done, you just click on the insert bibliography or insert reference list, and the whole bibliography just shows up. It pulls everything you've cited already and alphabetizes it or makes it numerical depending on your citation style. It's amazing. Okay, so how do you choose the right reference manager for you? This can be challenging because you want to choose one that's going to work, because once you learn to use one, that tends to be the one that you stick with. So you want to identify what features are important. So of the features I just covered, what are the most important to you? Are you going to be storing a ton of PDFs? Are you going to be working with groups? Do you need to annotate? So what are the things you're looking for? Also, what are your colleagues using? A lot of times this is what actually drives what reference manager we choose, because if the people you're working on projects with are using a certain one, that's probably going to be the one you end up using. Or it's also helpful to know what your colleagues are using, because if you get stuck or need help, it's nice to know someone who actually knows how to use that tool. You also want to ask yourself if you need something that's free or something that's fee-based. If you have no grant money or no CME money or nothing to pay for it, you might want to stick with something that's free. But even, I think the next slide talks about cost, even the fee-based ones are not that expensive. You also want to decide, are you going to be mostly using a computer or laptop, or are you mostly going to be using mobile? And this is something that is a real limitation of existing reference managers, because most of them rely on using extensions in your browser window to pull items into the reference manager. And extensions or browser extensions don't work well or don't work at all on mobile devices. So that is a real limitation. And something I've noticed since here at ICOM, all of our students are issued iPads when they start, and that's pretty much all they use. So it can be really hard to find a great reference manager that's easy and effective on an iPad only device. So that's just one limitation to note. And maybe you want to know who owns the company and how are they going to use your data. So a lot of us librarians used Mendeley for a long time, and then they got purchased by Elsevier, and a lot of librarians have feelings about Elsevier and how they run their business. So a lot of us ended up not using Elsevier or Mendeley anymore. And things like Zotero, it's open source. It is a very open company. They're sort of, I'm not sure about their ownership structure, but tends to be maybe more like if you want to ethically source your company, you might want to look into that as well. Okay, so pricing. Pricing tends to vary. Most cases, it's based on storage size, except with the exception of EndNote. EndNote is just this standalone software, and that can be about $200 up front, and then you're going to pay for upgrades as well. I don't think it's every year, but it's at least every couple of years. Generally, there's an academic or a student discount as well for that. RefWorks gets used by a lot of libraries, but I looked all over their website and could not find how much it would be for an individual to subscribe to. So maybe it's only an institutional subscription. I have no idea, but there you go. It's an item, but I don't know how much it is. Zotero, this varies by how much storage you want. The base level storage, I think, is 2 gigs per year, and it's $20 per year. Unlimited is $120. I've used Zotero for well over a decade, and I pay $20 a year, and it has been fine. I have not exceeded that yet, and I have really tried. Mendeley is a little more expensive, but the same thing. You have a base level up to unlimited, and SciWheel, $120 a year, but there's also student discounts and academic discounts as well for that. Okay, so this was a very short overview of citation managers because I'm a little ahead of time, great, because we didn't have a ton of time and I just wanted to give you a basic overview. But there are a lot of resources online that can help if you want to go into more detail. So there's some spreadsheets and comparison tables like this from the University of Chicago's library, where they look at the kind of the big reference managers and some of the features, and you can just browse through those again if you need help choosing the one that's right for you. So some of the final thoughts about reference managers. One of at least What I have noticed is there's not a great solution for mobile devices unless there's one out there that I have not discovered, which I would be so excited to find. The pricing structures do vary widely depending on the tool that you're getting and how much storage you need. My suggestion is you try out a couple before settling or purchasing. All of these have some sort of a free setting, either a free trial for things like EndNote or SciWheel, or like Zotero and Mendeley, it's free up until you've put a bunch of PDFs in there. And note that your needs may change over time. You may have, maybe using Zotero works for now, but maybe you're going to be working on a big project and you need a lot more space and you need something with more features. And so maybe you'll need an EndNote at some point. And I recognize that there is a learning curve for all of these, but it's not an impossible or overly steep learning curve. Everyone can learn these. They don't take that much time, and there's a lot of tools out there to help you learn, including YouTube videos, your librarians, colleagues, things like that. But generally, what I say is that the time it takes to learn these is going to save you in the end, especially if you're working on any kind of scholarly project. So summing up, if you're doing reference or doing any kind of research or scholarly activity, reference managers are not optional. I used to work with PhD students working on dissertations, and the first thing I would ask them before I even asked them what their topic was what reference manager they were using. And if they said no, they're like, "Oh, I'm fine. I don't need a reference manager." I'm like, "No, we're gonna get you set up right now." And then they came back and like, "Thank you, that saved my life." I'm like, I know. And there are a lot of reference managers out there. There are some of the ones that I have featured, but there's more than that as well. So figure out what's important to you before choosing and make sure you do take those on a test drive. So if you want to learn more, there are 2 scholarly snippet sessions that are coming up in October. One is on RefWorks and one is on SciWheel if you want more details on each of those. Ask your librarian if you have questions about reference managers. Most of us are familiar with at least a couple, some of us more than that. And make sure you download and take a couple on a test drive. Okay, so questions, comments. We have a little bit of time. I see there's a chat window. Here's my email address, first of all. If you don't have time to ask a question or if it doesn't get answered, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat about that. Okay, it looks like, thank you, Kyle. You've put the registration link and the YouTube channel and the survey link all in the chat. So does anyone have any questions about reference managers, Zotero, Mendeley, any of that kind of stuff? Okay, it looks like no questions. Again, my email address is right there. So if you have anything that you think of later on, please reach out to me and I will let you guys have the rest of your morning/afternoon back. Thank you so much for attending. I appreciate it.